there are some lies in our science books. Taught it for 15 years. Even though I'm not teaching it anymore, I still like to study. It's so many neat things to learn. We're going to cover some of that tonight.
Perception is being managed. We are being steered and guided by a hidden hand.
The whole world has been duped by the media that is not real.
Smart thinking, possible time traveler, smart thinking.
That night, boom, contact memory.
And then, Alex, if you don't agree, you'll be sent to a re-education camp.
Just because I'm old doesn't mean I've lost my touch with the ladies.
A lot of people here tonight feel like they lost. You know why?
Now, experts are suggesting that we're in a golden age of shape-shifting reptilian sightings. Now, why is that?
I was, and still am, a huge conspiracy guy. I literally ran out of new tin hat topics to research.
It was most definitely not capable of melting steel.
Then I would be a crackpot if I thought that was the case.
Thought that was the case.
Welcome to the Hypothetical Institute, a podcast about conspiracies.
My name is Luke.
I am Salt.
I am Cam. Gentlemen, how are we?
Pretty good.
Yeah,
I was going into that to say bloody awesome, but then I was like, pretty good. Yeah.
Pretty good. Just pretty good.
Just sell it.
I just before we started, I ate a pixie caramel, which you guys probably don't know what a pixie caramel is because it's a New Zealand treat.
Right.
But I think you'll find it's the longer lasting chew. And tell you what, that chew lasted.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm feeling really good. Like a pixie caramel, puts me in good spirits.
All right. Good vibes to begin with. This week, we are talking about UFOs.
We're not sponsored by Pixie Caramel, by the way.
No, we're not. This week, we are talking about UFOs and the shooting down of them.
Yeah.
Which is a topic that we decided to do, almost a month ago when this was in the news.
Yes.
Robbo, you were raring to go. Let's do the UFOs. They're shooting them down.
Yeah.
I said, no, Luke, let's just wait a few weeks so that all of the news can come out and we can talk about what's actually going on once we know what's actually happening. Because this will all be sorted.
Mm.
And how did that go?
It's best to strike when no one cares about it anymore.
Well, I was expecting them to get to the bottom of this because they could just go and pick up the pieces and be like, oh yeah, that was, it was just a balloon. But they've been very stum.
We've absolutely gotten to the bottom of this. They're just balloons. Haven't we?
Are they?
Yes.
Was the second one a balloon?
Was the third one a balloon? Was the fourth one a balloon, Robbo?
Yeah, because now there's a couple of balloon enthusiast groups going, hey, fucking balloon's gone missing.
Where's my balloons?
And they're like, and everyone's like, oh yeah. So they haven't picked up the other ones. I saw a thing. This was from Wikipedia. So there's 4 down in total. I think the main one was the one that there was footage of. But then there was immediately a few more. I was like, oh my God, there's one over Alaska now. We got to get it.
Yeah. So
it cost them billions of dollars to do this.
Yeah. How convenient for the military-industrial complex.
So the 4 missiles, AM-9X missiles expended for shooting down the 3 objects costed at least $1.5 billion. This is via Wikipedia. I did cross-check those sources, and yeah, they just fucking imagine $1.5 billion. What the fuck? And those balloons, if they are the enthusiast balloons, which it seems to be, they cost $12.
Yeah. You know when the first balloon was flying around and there were heaps of Republicans getting on the media being like Marjorie Taylor Greene types. I don't know if she said this specifically, but that type. Mm. And they're like, yeah, we could just shoot these down. I could just shoot it down with my gun. Mm. And so all of these authorities had to come in and be like, please don't try to shoot down the balloon. The balloon's up very high. Your bullets are not going to get to the balloon. They're going to go up and then they're going to come down and you might hit somebody. So please don't shoot the balloon. Now, sure, whatever. They could have gotten up in a hot air balloon and shot the balloon down with a normal gun. I think.
This is something I want to posit because they shot it down using. They had to wait till it the main one, the one that there was footage of. They had to wait till it was off the coast, and then shot it with a couple of jets. What other okay? We're in the Pentagon briefing room. They've called us in. Let's get the crack team from Hypothepod. How do we get this balloon without
just a massive fuck up? They're like the Hypothetical Institute. These are the people. They're always considering hypotheticals of that institute.
And how do we get this balloon? Bearing in mind, so the main one was roughly 60 meters tall, and I think it varies on how wide it was, but I think roughly at least 20 meters. So yeah, it's pretty big. It's kind of if you're living in a major city, it's probably as big as your apartment. If you live in an apartment, Salty, your apartment's probably smaller than that, right?
20 meters across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a chunky boy, the big balloon.
Yeah, especially compared to most of the balloons that you'll deal with in your day to day.
Yeah, I'm mostly dealing with water balloons. I think one that got reported was found to be not part of these four, but there was another one report. It was a Batman balloon, a little Batman helium balloon that someone floated up, which I thought was pretty funny. Anyway, we've been called into the Pentagon. We'll walk past the aliens in their little rooms.
Yep.
Walk past Bigfoot sitting at a desk.
He fucking hates
coffee.
He hates since he fucking revealed himself and has been tied to a desk.
Yeah. He's just filing those reports. And they say
spreadsheets all day.
Yeah.
God.
Missing the wilderness.
Maybe it's hard to do a spreadsheet with those giant hands of his.
Yeah.
They should get me a custom keyboard.
Ergonomic. Even just a standing desk.
Get him a standing desk. In my mind, he's standing like he is in the famous Bigfoot photo, always. You surprise him in his office, he's like, ooh.
It's like, how do you work twisted around like that? Doesn't it hurt your back?
Just busted him playing Doom on the computer. He hits the boss key. Salty, Hypothepod merch, I think we've got our design.
Yep.
Anyway, back to this scenario.
So they had to let them float across the entirety of the US. And like this, I remember logging in. I had a really couple of busy weekends, or really busy weekend. So I remember logging in and seeing people on Twitter going, this balloon thing. And I'm like, oh, cool, whatever that is, I'll check it out later. And then like 3 days later logging in and everyone's like, man, this balloon thing's still going. I was like, man, did America not solve the balloon? I feel like that's an easy solution. So they just let it float across all of the United States, and then it got to the sea and they spent, millions of dollars to shoot it down. Well, are there any better solutions, do we think?
I don't know. It's hard to say. One thing I noticed about that initial balloon was there was a lot of people, like, the experts being like, they can't shoot the balloon down. It's too wily for our missiles. It's like, no, I don't think that's how it works. I think you can shoot it down easily. Even not sending like some hillbillies up in a hot air balloon with shotguns, I think you could just fire a missile at it. But yeah, I guess they didn't want to like bring it down on anyone's house.
I would love to see that as a sitcom. The government's like, we can't spend millions of dollars scrambling the Air Force jets to go up and shoot this balloon out. What can we do? And they just get a bunch of hillbillies and put them in a hot air balloon with shotguns.
That's pretty good.
And send them up.
It was pretty low as well. Like, it was low enough people could just gawk at it from their house or their backyard. So, like, I don't know, a regular hot air balloon. Like, they took that hot air balloon up to space that time, remember?
When the guy jumped out, the Red Bull?
Yeah.
Maybe they send him up in his balloon and be like, all right, when you get up to the atmosphere and we'll jump out, we'll give you a pin.
Yeah, just prick it on
as
the
you
way
pass
past.
it.
Yeah. And then hold on to it, deploy your parachute, float to safety.
Yeah. So
could you, like, we've seen, the Top Gun movies.
Great movies.
I've not seen the second one.
Yeah, it sucks. It's such a turd. They like precision fly. You see little Tom Cruise like fly up That's why I called him little. Like, I wasn't trying to be patronising because he's short. It's just misspoke. Fly up like in between, on an angle, like sideways between two jets, and be like, "Whoa, hello, boys!" And then he taps their wings, tap 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 tap. It flies off. Definitely happened in Top Gun. No one correct me. The precision they lead us to believe in those movies. Like, can't they just zoom one past it and kind of like nudge it in the direction they need it to go? Or like, you know what I mean? Like, it seems just letting it, because they were concerned with surveillance, and they just let it coast across slowly for a week or something.
Yeah, well, just checking everything out.
Just give the hillbillies in their balloon, just give them a leaf blower.
Yeah.
Just blow that sucker over Canada.
Well, so this is the thing. We had the first balloon that they shot down, and then once they shot that down, the crack team at NORAD were like, oh, what if we tweaked our radar a little bit to detect balloons? And they're like, they discovered, oh, there's balloons everywhere. And so there was one over Canada, which was also shot down. And then, there was a couple around the United States that they took out. So we ended up 4 balloons in total.
Am I crazy in thinking that refueling planes while in the air is a thing, right?
Yeah, no, that's a thing.
Then, you know what I mean? Like, get a poker and just poke it. Retool your little fuel thing. Poke the balloon.
Yeah.
Keep it on the end of it, and just float down to safety.
There's probably a lot of things you can do. So, the weird thing with some of these other crafts is we've talked in the past, and we've talked about UFOs, about how like every single pilot is completely unreliable narrator of whatever they see. So there was a thing on.
I just want to say I don't think that of every single pilot.
You cannot trust a pilot.
Okay,
famously, tall tales.
Wait, it is a famously drunk profession, eh?
Yeah.
I guess that was the stereotype in the 80s and 90s. Was there's the pilot just smashing down booze in the bar first.
Yeah, because he's seen some shit.
Yeah.
So they sent these pilots up to take out these balloons, and they got, like, according to a report on CNN, like wildly inconsistent reports back on what the UFOs were, whether you could see how they were being propelled, all sorts of things like this, where they were just getting different stories from everyone. Some of the pilots were like, oh, all of my equipment went haywire. Some of the other ones were like, mine was fine. So, yeah, really not helping the stereotype of the lying pilot, I don't think.
I did listen to a pilot on a UFO podcast. He's a former jet fighter pilot, and he has his own UFO podcast, but he was interviewed on this other one. But he's also, I think he does like airplane recovery safety, and he seemed to be pretty legitimate. And I thought it was going to be cooked, but he was a little bit rational. But he was talking about, as a jet fighter pilot, he was trained to not react to things. So, like, if a glass falls off a table in his house and his wife reacts to try and stop it, but he doesn't, he just waits for it to happen. And he's having to train himself out of that. And I don't know why. I feel like a whole thing of a pilot is to have real quick reactions. So, like, if you're in a dogfight, or is it like you see something and you don't like, jerk your controls up and, while you're doing your tap, tap, tap maneuver.
Yeah.
And then tap too hard.
When you're upside down above the MiG and you look up and the guy in the MiG is like, "Bleh," you don't want to be like, "Oh!" Because otherwise the MiGs would just be taking us out left, right, and center, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, they'd just be drawing scary faces on the tops of their helmets.
Yeah.
So when you roll over inverted on top of them because you go, haha, I'm going to flip him the bird.
Yeah.
And the fucking demon on his helmet. Jesus.
Fighter pilots are basically magpies.
So
put a couple of eyes on your helmet, they're spooked.
Robert, you've got it in for fighter pilots. You've called them liars. You've called them easily spooked. I think the thing with being a fighter pilot, and like these guys that are looking at these craft to me, like I couldn't see any like means of propulsion, they are like going past them fairly quickly. And I was watching this on CNN. They're like, some of the pilots reported they didn't see a means of propulsion. It's like, yeah, because they were like, they've gone past it in a second. And so their reports back like, I couldn't see a means of propulsion doesn't mean that there wasn't a means of propulsion. But also, if these are just balloons that are floating, the means of propulsion, the 7 winds.
7 winds, I think. Are there 7 winds?
Or is it 4 winds? Maybe
I don't know how many winds there are.
7 seas.
7 seas.
Yeah.
This pilot was also talking about how it's actually kind of good now that which I kind of agree with. He was far more rational than I'd hoped. I wanted something cooked from him. That there's sort of reports that people think are now just Starlink satellites, because pilots are like being told to look for things now, whereas in the past they're like, oh, maybe don't look at things, don't report everything you see. And now they're like, okay, we just need to report everything. Let's get on these reports, but guys. And so now there's all these false reports coming in. But he's like, that's actually a good thing, because then we can actually work out, this is all data we can use to work out what it is and what it isn't. And if it's a false report and it's Starlink, or, it's mistakenly reported and it's just Starlink, then we know where to, what to look for in the future. Which kind of leads to our kind of point of like, pilots don't know what the shit they're seeing up there, because, they weren't able to talk about it, and they didn't seem to talk about it with other pilots. So they just, everything's a UFO.
Yeah. But also they're going fast and they've got a bit of a weird angle.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about some of the conspiracy theories. Once again, the conspiracy theory community have really let me down, I feel.
Oh, I had the same. Why is this for you, Cam?
So for me, in the past few years, we've seen this shift in the way that UAVs and UFOs are reported, where you've had all of these military reports where they're like, oh yeah, there's heaps of things flying around, boats and things, right? And it's tricky because there's clearly a terrestrial explanation for this stuff. And it does seem like sometimes they're hanging on to the old terminology just to keep things a little interesting in the media, maybe. It's like, you could just say, oh, we've had lots of reports of drones or whatever, or advanced drones. But they're like, no, if we just use the old terminology that everyone associates with little green men, it makes the story a little spicier. But what I found frustrating about all of the conspiracy theories that I saw about these 4 balloons is that no one was like linking it back to the fact that there's been like this spate of UFO stuff in the past few years. And all of the videos that have come out through FOI and stuff, and through your mate from Blink-182's little project, like it was like completely isolated from everything that's been going on.
Which I think is increasingly happening with the cookers, right? Or the conspiracy. It's as I said, the people protesting vaccines in my town weren't doing it outside the Freemason Lodge where the vaccines were being administered.
Yeah, because they don't know.
That's like it's 101 conspiracy stuff that they've just all kind of missed out on. And so now it's just like, it's like they don't have object permanence anymore. It's just whatever's in front of them is the only conspiracy.
Yeah, but also if you've got like a lot of newbies that aren't up on the law, but I mean the stuff that like all your Blink-182 video stuff is not that old.
No.
And I was looking at people who have like been around for a while, and they're like, this happened, this all started last week. It's like, no, if we wanted to come up with a conspiracy that the government is trying to set up a fake alien invasion, so that's what we're going to get to in a second, you could go back like a couple of years and be like, well, there are all these news reports about UFOs that have come out over the past few years that are all setting this up. But they're not even, the people I was seeing weren't even doing that.
I did see a little bit of talk about disclosure, and as the phrase they use for, they're going to tell us that it's all happening and they're preparing us for it. And the lockdowns, which is the classic gear, the lockdowns have been preparing us for alien invasions, and that's when they're really going to lock us down. because, we're used to it now and they can just say, oh, it's aliens, we need to hide from them. But I also see your point where there's not a lot of that. That wasn't the pervasive stuff.
Mm. So, did you see Project Bluebeam come up a bit?
I did from the UFO podcast guy. His YouTube is called UFO Extraterrestrial Reality. And what's his podcast, and his YouTube channel is Quirk Zone, YouTube Quirk Zone. He talks like a mob guy. Cam, I think you watched a bit of it, right?
Hey, Project Bluebeam, forget about it.
They're up there with these balloons. He's pretty interesting. I only watched a little bit. I'm going to watch some more of him just because he sounds like he uses like the word buffoon and dumbbell.
Why couldn't these buffoons just shoot the balloons down? You got a couple of dumbbells up there?
Yeah, he's great. So he was talking about Project Bluebeam, was it?
Yep.
What else did you learn about Project Bluebeam?
Well, so I saw people both ascribing this to Project Bluebeam and also people being like, that's just what they want you to think, that it's Project Bluebeam. So I saw Jordan Sather, who's like a QAnon decoder, who I think was maybe a little closer to some of the Republicans than some people would like. He was like, they're saying this is Project Bluebeam to distract you from what's really going on, which is, Biden's laptop and the Twitter hearings in Congress and shit. Like they're like, oh, we've come up with this UFO stuff to distract you from Biden's laptop. But then meanwhile, I saw Mark Dice, who we've talked about ages ago.
He's very grey. He's grey, that guy.
He's very grey, but I got sort of frustrated watching him because he takes a very superior tone in everything. Like, he's so much smarter than you. I always remember when I see his stuff that he used to be like a Matrix cosplay guy.
Really?
Like, he takes this like tone, like, oh, these wacko liberals, they're doing all this stuff. Like, he's like a real conservative serious commentator now, like, oh, these crazy blue-haired liberals. But it's like, when he came on the scene, he was like, my name's Neo.
I think a Matrix cosplay guy to be like, I'm a political commentator, government insider, could be the worst kind of guy.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a worse kind of guy.
So he was taking a real I told you so tone. He's like, look, in 2013, I put out a video on YouTube about Project Bluebeam, so I told you all this was happening, right? So, Project Bluebeam, what it is, it was a conspiracy that was come up by a Canadian guy in the 90s, or it might have been, I think he put it out in like the mid-90s, but it was supposed to be something that was supposed to be put in place in the 80s, but it just didn't. So they reset it for the mid-90s. It didn't keep on getting updated when stuff didn't happen, though, because he died in like 1996. But anyway, Project Bluebeam was a multi-part project. The first part was there would be fake earthquakes all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the sites of the earthquakes, they would discover like artifacts and things that would shake the foundations of world religions. So they'd like
the earthquakes would uncover these things, or they would just be left there.
Well, so the earthquake, I wasn't quite sure whether like they're actually going to make an earthquake happen and then they're going to like throw the skeleton of Jesus holding a beer can down into the hole, or if they're just going to say, oh, there was an earthquake and then this is what we dug up. So yeah, there'd be an earthquake in like in the holes that were created by the earthquakes. They'd be like, oh wow, we found all these artifacts that like shake everything up. So like all world religion is sort of, I don't know, like we thought we knew what was going on. Now we don't really know what's going on. It'll just create a lot of confusion about religion.
Christians will finally discover that Jesus wasn't white and they'll be like, what?
Step 2 is that they would project projections all over the world of God, like up in space.
Oh, yeah.
And then they would project telepathic messages into people's minds so that they thought God was speaking to to you personally. And all of the world, if you're like a Buddhist, you'd see Buddha. If you're a Muslim, you'd see Allah. If you're a Christian, you'd see Jesus or whatever. And then all of these things that you're seeing, that all turn into, conveniently, the one guy who was the Antichrist.
Ah.
And he'd be like, guess what, guys? You know how your faith was shaken last week? Well, now I'm here to tell you that the Antichrist is the way to go. And everyone would be like, well, this makes sense. And then
unsnapping their Slayer records,
yeah,
unburning all the metal. Oh my God.
And then they were also going to do, this was a complicated plan. There was like more steps. But then one of the last things they were going to do is make everyone think that aliens were about to invade. And then they're like, look, there's going to be aliens. Everyone better get a microchip and let's just do all the New World Order stuff. So we can avoid all these aliens. I don't know why the Antichrist and all the earthquakes had to happen. Why you couldn't just skip to the alien thing. So
you hit the body a few times before you attack the head. You know, it's classic boxing strategy.
When did Watchmen come out? The comic book.
Oh, the comic book? Or 90s, I think.
Yeah,
was it before this?
I mean, you were really vague on when this happened. So,
it was like 1994. I think he wrote it.
The Watchmen. Google sucks, and it's giving me the film as the top result. 1986.
Jeez.
All right. I mean, essentially, part of what this is based on the end of the Watchmen, right?
Yeah.
But then also, people commonly ascribe this to, there was like a whole Star Trek plot that was basically this. That came out shortly before this guy came up with his thing. Anyway, the thing that you might notice about Project Bluebeam in its complicated nature is that it bears very little relation to fucking balloons.
Yeah, balloons is like
it's not Project Balloon Beam.
No. So
it's it's very Wizard of Oz like, and like, you know, we think of, you know, they're doing all these elaborate things, and you just see it's a dodgy dude behind a curtain kind of a thing.
So the
balloon.
From what I can tell, the connection is that the balloons and like other UFOs that are spotted are all just like test runs for the eventual technology that will show us God. And it's like, no, I don't think so, guys. I think you've got like this old Canadian book you're just trying to shoehorn into everything.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense why, like, to go to all that effort to just as a trial run that doesn't even make sense as a trial run. Like, they're not even close to each other.
Well, and even if it's just like a test run for like the last bit where there's going to be an alien invasion, like, why are you testing that stuff before you've tested out the far more complicated technology required to beam God into everyone's faces?
Give us the God beam.
Yeah.
Like, they can't even pop balloons.
They can't even pop balloons.
So apparently with the God beam, I couldn't quite confirm this, but there was like a plan by the CIA to essentially do this in Iraq, maybe during the first Gulf War, where they were going to have like Allah appear to the people of Iraq and be like, oh, you got to overthrow Saddam. But it was one of those things where it's like, it's in some file somewhere. I don't think it was something where they had the technology. I think it was more someone being like, oh, that'd be a good idea.
Yeah, like what happens with a lot of these things is people sit in a room, brainstorm everything, write it all down, gets filed away. Someone FOIs it, or it gets released in a trove, and people are like, whoa, can't believe they were going to do this.
I saw another thing that I saw getting used a lot by Project Bluebeam people was there was like a Paul Krugman, who's an economist. He gave a speech like years ago where he's like, you know what we need is an alien invasion, or we could just make one up. And we tell everyone, oh, you know, to deal with this alien invasion, we need to invest in like high-speed rail and all this stuff, and it'll bring everyone together. And then at the end of it, we can be like, oh, look, we fixed all the problems, and no one will be mad at us. And it's like, oh, I don't know if that theory that no one will be mad at you if they discover you fixed all the problems is necessarily going to hold up.
There are so few people that would see high-speed rail as fixing all the problems.
Well, like he's like, we'll do high-speed rail. We'll fix it. We'll fix this. We'll fix that. We'll fix healthcare because we're all got to come together to fix all this stuff because the aliens are coming. And then at the end, we can be like, oh, looks like the aliens decided to go to Venus instead.
Trickier made everything better.
Yeah. But that gets like used like he laid out the whole plan.
Right. Do you want to hear Jonesy's take?
Yes, please.
Oh, shit.
So he had a little bit on this. He says that they were EMP weapons and it was a test to... He basically said, why would they use it to spy on us when you have satellites? And he said this, there's, in the 80s we could read a coin and a book on a lady sunbathing, a book being read by a lady sunbathing in a bikini in Manhattan from satellite back then. And it was really specific. Like, that's a really specific scenario. And I tried to find any evidence of that because I wanted to check out this, this lady in the 80s in her bikini.
Yeah. What she was reading.
Yeah, what she was reading. Kind of weirdly, sorry?
She's reading it.
Oh, okay. Interesting. What I Googled, coin, satellite, lady, bikini, Manhattan, all the results were Bitcoin related.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck? And Google's getting really shit lately. So I tried it in Bing.
Yeah.
Got a little bit more relevant results.
Did the Bing AI help you out or did it try and take over the world?
Gaslight me.
Yeah.
And then I think I tried it in DuckDuckGo. Bing was the best. I think DuckDuckGo just uses everyone else anyway. But yeah, I read a lot of people discussing what you can see from a satellite. And there are a few theories, and I think the most people say actually you're not going to ever be able to see anything because the atmosphere of the Earth and how big of a satellite you'd actually need to get, so close. Then I think one thing I saw said it would be 1 centimeter pixels would be the absolute best we can do. And I saw sort of an example of that. And you could sort of see like a chunky crack in a sidewalk. You certainly couldn't read a headline unless it was, aliens invade and that was taking up the whole page.
Yeah, large print headlines.
Yeah. So I don't know where he got that example from. If anyone out there knows this lady reading a book in Manhattan,
yeah,
or if it's just something that...
If it's like a large print book for the vision impaired, you might be able to read it. But then imagine how huge it would be in large print.
Yeah. That's too big. And yeah. You have to break it into many volumes.
I'd be suggesting, go out and get the book on cassette.
Absolutely. Put it in your Walkman because you could have a Walkman back then.
Yeah.
I did see some leaked satellite pics from spy satellites in the 80s, or what people claim to be, and they were black and white and they sucked. It was just shapes. I think it was like a loading dock, and I was like, I think that's a boat. Some shipping crates. It was really not great. Anyway, Jonesy, when he was 16, he was out driving his car, and he was near one of the Nevada bases, Air Force bases, and he saw a balloon crashing. And then he said back then we didn't have cameras in our cars, but he did for some reason say that his parents had a camera at home, but we didn't have them in the cars then. I don't know why he added that little bit of detail in, and I think that's what makes me love Jonesy so much, is he just adds in these random fucking details. Like, his parents having a camera at home is just of no bearing into anything he's talking about, but he has to get that in there. So yeah, and so since he saw one crashing when he was 16, he's an expert on balloons now, because he's just he was there one time when one crashed, and there's balloons and dirigibles and Hindenburgs. He said there's many Hindenburgs flying around.
Yeah, he sounds like a real expert.
I think he's failed to grasp what the Hindenburg actually was, but that's fine. And basically, yeah, this was a trial run for an EMP attack. So they were going to spread them all out over the country, and then he said without like a dozen of them, you can just blast the US and just knock it completely out. Which is interesting because remember the mob guy, or the guy that sounded like a mob guy I mentioned earlier that has the podcast, and he was talking about them. He was saying that balloons don't crash at all. He was saying that balloons just fall to the ground. And his point is the mainstream media are using this balloon to like vindicate all the skeptics, saying, seeing that this is a balloon proves that all these UFO sightings are untrue. And this article says that the balloon in Roswell crashed. Well, we know that balloons don't crash. They fall to the ground. So I think this guy's failed to grasp what a crash is.
Yeah.
I think what you'll find is that balloons actually go and go all over the place.
Yeah. And then eventually they crash. But they're all over the place. That's just why they always get confused with UFOs.
It's like, why is it moving so like erratically in the sky? And if you're up next to it.
The other thing on InfoWars, Owen Schroyer, the Squeaky Alex Jones, he's not saying it's EMP. They need to, I guess they just say so much shit. There's so many theories flying around. He was saying it's all a distraction. And it's a distraction from the mass genocide happening with the vaccines. So he's kind of stuck in 2022.
Yeah.
We've moved past that, Owen Schroyer. We're just kind of ignoring COVID deaths now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of pretty weak theories out there about all this. And really, it's just a fucking balloon.
Yeah. Once again, we call upon the conspiracy theorists to step it up a little bit.
Yeah. Now, just quickly before we finish up, the one that was shot down, the one that we all saw, or there's footage of if you haven't seen it, I just want to read out what Army and Air Force equipment they used to get this, or Navy equipment, I guess, to get this. So there's 2 F-22 Raptors. It was monitored by crewed aircraft deployed by NORAD, including a Boeing E-3 Sentry airborne early warning control system, a Boeing RC-135 reconnaissance aircraft, a U-2S Dragon Lady, and another F-22 Raptor. Blah, 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 blah. The US government officials said at least 2 U-2S reconnaissance aircraft used to gather data about the balloon while it was over the Midwest. It was tracked by another one of those, and then there was another one involved. So that's not even in the shooting it down. And then they shot it down, which then cost millions of dollars as well. So that was another 2 aircraft involved in that. And then they had to capture it. The United States Navy and the Coast Guard joined up. Guided missile destroyer USS Oscar Austin, USS Philippine Sea, USS Carter Hall, and there's US Navy divers and FBI counterintelligence agents, unmanned underwater vehicles controlled from rigid inflatable lifeboats use side-scan sonar to locate it, and then there was recovery divers. What the fuck?
Yeah.
It's a fucking balloon. That is so much stuff. That is more stuff than any other Navy or Army has. What the fuck?
Red Bull guy, some shurikens, done.
Get a shuriken in the mix. It's way cooler. And it's just coming back to my point earlier, how this went for days, and seeing how much resources they threw at it to shoot down a fucking balloon. It's kind of it's one of those things where they're so geared towards having mass warfare with other giant things like they have. They just put up a little balloon and they just lose their minds, scramble the entire Air Force. You can see why America struggles in guerrilla warfare, because they just don't know how to handle a balloon.
Well, I guess just maybe a final point from me, just on this stepping up that is required of our conspiracy theorists. I didn't see anyone being like, oh, this is all just to gin up war, which seems to be like the simplest conspiracy theory you could come up with. We're saying, oh, China keeps spying on us, and then in China they're like, oh, we've got a balloon too. We've got a US balloon that we're going to shoot down. It's like, I feel like you could come up with a pretty simple explanation for what's happening here if you were so inclined. But no, it's all about Biden's laptop.
Remember, the military-industrial complex was a pretty key part of conspiracy of the 90s, and all this happens and they're just fine with it. And they're not. It comes back to Biden's laptop, and it's Or, I mean, at least Jonesy had an original take on it.
Yeah, it was stupid because there's probably better ways. There's better ways to put EMVs. Like you could put them in the back of a car and just drive where you needed to go, rather than relying on the four winds to blow you.
That's our chemtrail discussion from one of our early episodes. Of it would be easier just to drive around in cars and do it because there's so much wind up there.
Yeah.
Can I finish with a little story?
Please.
Yeah.
About Americans and stuff. This is a hot take overheard this week. So Carly had to go get a little thing cut off her shoulder, just a little skin thing. It's nothing. Just a little thing she got cut off. But while she was getting it done, she was talking to her doctor and the nurse. And they were talking about Pink, the singer.
Yep, singer-songwriter. Yep.
Singer-songwriter, sorry.
Multi-talented.
Fans. Multi-talented, yep.
Does all her own dancing.
Yep. And they were talking about how apparently on her latest tour or something, she wanted to do this thing where she has like a magic carpet that she flies in on that's actually like suspended with drones.
Oh, yeah.
So a bunch of drones connected to like a magic carpet that flies her in.
Yeah.
But she couldn't do it because insurance and stuff are like, well, you know, what if someone hacks into the drones while you're flying in and they just crash you out of the sky?
Yeah, that's the only problem I could see with that plan.
And then the hot take by one of the medical staff was, hey, you couldn't do that in America. Someone would probably shoot it down.
This is Bance in the doctor's office.
Bance in the doctor's little surgery bit, yeah.
In the OR.
In the OR, mate.
Yeah.
They got those Americans dead to rights there.
Yeah. Tell you what.
Yeah, the insurance on something like that with Pink, because when she tours Australia, she's like the bloody biggest ticket in town.
Yeah.
She sells out like 40 shows a year or something.
And she's already up there doing rope work and shit. Like, she's already
doing all sorts of rope.
Short out the yin yang. Can you say that? Is that racist? You got to cut that.
We'll find out. We'll find out what I'm editing. I'll go back. And then once I've found out, I'll make a decision. Am I going to let Salter get cancelled, or will I save him from himself like I always do? Like I always do, and I get no thanks, and you two turn against me, and you don't know the things I do to save you both.
Emma knows that I'm not racist, so
yeah,
shouldn't get any listener complaints.
Alrighty, well, that is our episode. If people want to find us, we are on Twitter at Hypothepod. We're on Patreon. Thank you to Tammy, our Cook $33 sponsor.
Bingo.
Salty, where can they find you, my friend?
Look, I've got a Twitch channel, but I'm not really streaming that much at the moment, so just here on bloody Hypothepod.
Yeah, keep an eye out around the curry bars of Footscray.
Yeah.
Robbo, where can they get you?
Find me at 10 Lyndhurst Street at Short Jaw Brewing, famously not aloof.
Yeah, you're going to be slinging some aloof beers back there?
We'll be slinging some brews.
How's the bloody hot cross bun beer going?
Yeah, it's going all right. A little bit of slowly start, but
Good
we're
reviews?
just getting it out. I don't think I've looked at any. I don't look at reviews. I don't need to know what anyone thinks about it. I know the problems and the good things about our beer. I don't need to hear other jerks say it.
Slightly aloof attitude regarding the reviews of the beer.
It's just more riddled with anxiety about our product.
Backing up a lot of what I've been hearing about Robbo and his aloofness.
Turn it up.
You can find me on Twitter at Sexenheimer. My radio show on 3CR is Yenar Passaran, Thursdays, 4:30 p.m. Check it out. All right.
And stick around for the news show where we'll be talking about the lab leak.
Oh,
Get excited, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't worry about a thing, except if all our world leaders are alien reptilians. I said don't worry about a thing, except maybe the fluoride in our water supply contains mind-altering drugs. Don't worry about a thing, except whether or not Port Arthur was a false flag operation in which to disarm Australia. I said don't worry about a thing, except you can definitely hear and say I buried Paul at the end of Strawberry Fields forever. Ooh, don't worry about a thing. Except not only did Bush do 9/11, but he also keeps the planes out in Area 51, which, let's not forget, where all of the aliens are. Don't worry about a thing. Except Donald Trump is clearly a woman, and you're just blind if you can't see that. Why don't you open your eyes?